What's up, Seahawks fans? It's Josh on the 12 Talk podcast. Now, we're bringing you a very special episode today. Mitch and I got together with Bryce from the Hawkszone Rundown pod. If you don't follow them, go check them out. Ryan and Bryce, fantastic dudes. It's the second time we've been on there. Go give them a follow. And whilst you're at it, if you're catching us, feel free, like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. Now, we spent a good old chunk of time on this pod talking about DK Metcalf. Cut him, keep him, what do we do? And we also talked about Geno and what quarterbacks in the league we would take over him. So stay tuned. It's coming up straight after this.
So the first kind of topic I wanted to touch and get your guys' opinion on, because we haven't talked literally since pre-draft. What do you think's going on with all this love and hate for DK? Whether we extend him, whether we trade DK, and now he's working out with Russell in California. As he going to the Steelers, you see all those rumors start popping up everywhere. Like, what is it? What is driving this conversation within the Seahawks community and especially the fan base about getting rid of DK, who's a young star receiver in the NFL?
Mitch, I'll let you take this one first, mate.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a difficult situation because people see him as a star, like you say, in the NFL, but his numbers and his cap hit don't necessarily quite tally up. And when you look at the numbers for players like Jefferson, the numbers you'd see on Amon-Ra St. Brown, players that are, better than him statistically and have a better body of work in the NFL to some degree, people probably don't want to see DK Metcalf getting that kind of money at this point. There's also behavior sort of concerns there as well. I think some Seattle fans wouldn't be heartbroken to see the back of him based on the numbers he'd need to be paid to stay and his behavior while he's been here. I mean, look at the fact that the 49ers are literally offering bonuses to whoever gets him to lose his cool. He's seen his attitude is seen as a weakness of his, and he's also in the same breath called a leader on this team. So that, I think, kind of gives you a little bit of the background on why there's such a divide amongst the fan base in DK Metcalf. I think it's fascinating to see how a team of coaches that have absolutely no loyalty to DK Metcalf deal with any discipline issues this year, because Pete would stick an arm around him and tap him on the wrist and make apologies for him. I don't know that Mike McDonald does that. I think first time he's challenged with a disciplinary issue, I think he'll put his mark on it. And this is a contract year for DK Metcalf. So I think that it's a really interesting spot. Really, really interesting spot. Josh?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I've said this before in our Discord, on X, DK is, I wouldn't class him as an elite wide receiver yet because he's not put up the seasonal performances that would loft him into that echelon. I don't think he's going to be seeing the cap that someone like Justin Jefferson got, which is what, 100 and, hang on, I've got it here, 140 million. Wow. So 35 million per year. Ridiculous money. The DK is, well, he's doing all right. He's 24 million. But you have to start questioning, are we getting the production to justify that from him? It seems at the moment, and the coaches that we've had previously haven't been able to utilize DK in a manner to befit the money we're spending on him. So for that type of money, I'd be thinking, you want him to have double-digit touchdowns every single year. You want him to be over 1,000 years, which is what he's been 3 times in the last 5 years. Very close over 5. So he's got 2 900 and 967-yard seasons. So one of each. But I would want him, if he's pushing on a contract year, to stop losing his cool, to stop being targeted by people. I understand he's a big physical presence and wants to try and dominate a game and impose his will. Absolutely fine. But you don't want him to be losing his cool and costing the team. Like Mitch said, in the contract year, with a new coaching staff, how are they going to bring the best out in DK? How are they going to adjust to his behavioral issues? I can see the arguments on both sides. For me, he is a very close to elite wide receiver. If you get the right play calls for him, he could be elite. He could be a complete game changer and a game wrecker. But on the other hand, he's not proved it yet. You're going to be working a lot with the what if. So I can see them both. I personally would keep him because I think he has got that potential with the right system, but I don't think he's there yet. So I can see why people say trade him, get a first or whatever, but I don't think you probably get a first for him at this rate because he's 27. There are young wide receivers coming through, and you could get someone who's a first-round pick for cheaper, could probably offer the same production.
Yeah, like for me, it's kind of I understand completely with the antics that have taken part, and I'd say they kind of escalated maybe in the last 2 seasons. Like when he first came in as a rookie, he'd get into the odd shoving match with like Jalen Ramsey or whatever, but we all know Jalen Ramsey has that effect on people. Like he gets under everybody's kind of skin and whatnot. The thing for me with DK that I look at is I also look at who our offensive coordinators have been and how they've used DK. DK's seen a exponentially massive jump in double coverage or bracketing where the safeties rolled over top of him. And I think in some respects, like when he was going through the Russ era, they didn't ask him to do a lot except for run deep, curls, posts, and that was about it. Well, if I know I got a safety over top, it's kind of hard to do that. And Russ never threw the ball in the middle of the field well. We all know that. And so, yeah, DK's not going to be like an Amon-Ra St. Brown where he's this shifty inside receiver. But the thing that I look at with him is how has he been deployed in these offenses? Shane Waldron was not a very creative offensive coordinator, except when you gave him 3 tight ends on the field. Let's be honest. Like even when they gave him JSN last year, it didn't take until basically the latter half of the year for them to figure out, oh, yes, we've got this really good young third receiver that theoretically probably is our number 2 receiver because Tyler Lockett's not the same receiver he was. Let's figure out how we can get him the ball and involved. I think now with Ryan Grubb in play here and the guys that they brought in to coach this offense, the one thing I've heard a lot through minicamp and everything is DK, you're not going to know where he lines up. Mike McDonald has said that. Jake Bobo has said that. Other guys, like they're moving us all around. We have to know every spot. And I don't think that was necessarily something that was promoted by the prior offensive coordinators in Schottenheimer and Waldron. Mm-hmm. So, like, I agree. I wouldn't put him in the same categories as Justin Jefferson. He's not there yet. And I don't know if he'll ever be a 100-catch receiver, but I think he's in that grouping of just right below that where, like, if DK's used right, I could see him being in the same conversation as an A.J. Brown or those type of receivers that are these big body freaks, what Julio used to be. Calvin Johnson, like you look at DK and you put his numbers up against Terrell Owens and Calvin Johnson and Julio in those first couple of years, they're this, like almost he's on par with them and what they're doing. So I think, yes, I think you kind of do need to consider at the end of this offseason extending DK Metcalf because, and I agree, you can go into the draft and try and find somebody else, but unless you're pulling out a Malik Neighbors or, you know, someone along those lines that's going to be an impact day one starter, he's such a freak. Like, he's just such a matchup nightmare. If you move him around, like, the one thing that drove me nuts was you look at, like, other teams, again, Atlanta, or Philadelphia being one. A.J. Brown lines up in the slot, and now all of a sudden the linebacker's trying to cover A.J. Brown.
Yep.
Like, that's a mismatch, and you can exploit that. And especially with Geno, who has no fear of throwing the ball over the middle of the field, you can now start to create some of those matchup issues for defenses where, okay, cool, DK is not just jogging out to the left side of the offense and he's going to line up and we can put our best corner there. Like, oh, he's in the right slot. Now he's in the left. Now he's split out wide to the right and motioning across the formation to, like, that's what kind of gets me excited, because I look very much at, and I don't know if Ryan Grubb's going to take everything from Washington and bring it to the NFL. I just don't see that. But I think the usage of how he deployed his receivers from Washington with like a Dunze and a Jalen Polk and a McMillan, he never knew where they were going to line up. And I think that's what might be the biggest change to Seattle's offense, is the multiplicity of movement with the receivers, where they're going to be, how you're going to deploy them. So I think you do have to give DK. I don't think the hate's justified, though.
No.
How so many people have been, oh, we need to trade him and we need to get him out of town, and he's this. Like, I know Mike Salk from 710 has been like the kind of the lead, guy with the pitchfork on that one.
Yeah.
And
he's been on the soapbox about it. Yeah.
And it's like,
and I'm thinking, I'm sorry, how often have a team like Seattle, how often have we drafted a wide receiver with this potential? It's very rare. And a big thing I see for DK, especially last season, a lot of it was frustration. You could see there were games where he went so hard trying to sell his route and trying to make himself open for the ball. But then by the third quarter, he didn't know or didn't believe he was going to get it, or he didn't think he was going to be matched up one-on-one or given the right route. So he just jogged to his spot, didn't actually look like he was there as a willing or open receiver. So I think that's a massive part of this argument as well. Whereas last season he didn't, I don't want to say he didn't care, because we know he's a very passionate player and a very passionate individual, and based on his comments, I don't think he's looking for the huge payday. He wants to win games. I think he likes being in Seattle. I don't know if he loves it. He likes his teammates, but I think the big piece of the conversation is can you use him and make him feel and be a valued wide receiver in this offense? Because there are teams out there in the league that would probably kill to have a DK Metcalf. But when it comes to trade talks, would they give up what we think he's worth? And I personally think the answer is no.
So what would you pay him? What would you be happy paying DK Metcalf? 3-year, 75, 25 a year, lots of guarantees. Because I think,
something in that ballpark.
Josh,
I would probably, I'd probably say about the same, maybe even a 4-year, because we've said it on our pod before, on the 12 Talk podcast, where I think if you're going to build a team and you want them to be aggressive, you want them to be in people's faces, he is the type of person with the right coaching and guidance could be a team captain on the offense. And if you're going to pay him, you want to keep him around for 3 to 4 years. I'd say 25 mil a year, dependent on, and we said this off air before we jumped on, it's all dependent on how he performs this year. If we sign him early and extend him, then we might negate this whole conversation of, is he worth it? Because if he excels in this Grubb offense, he could be commanding more money by the end of the season. If we re-sign him sooner, we could possibly get a bit of a discount. But I'm sorry, I'm taking the words out of your mouth here, Mitch. I do apologize. But it's all part of the conversation. This is something that holistically Seahawks fans need to look at. Trading him, I don't think we'll get the value that we think he's worth, because people will look at his performance and go, nah, yeah, he's got potential, but he's not put the numbers up yet. Can he do it in our system? Extending him, do it early, knowing that he is a key part of this offense, can do things, can be a leader amongst men because people do gravitate towards him. Do it early, get a discount, and then if this season he excels, you're onto a winner. Or wait till the end of the season and then you're paying him even more if he excels. Or even at the end of the season, he performs the way he has done. He's still going to want the same type of contract, if not more. You never know. It's just such a big, it's one of those where you could make a whole pod of just arguments for and against, and you can have multiple scenarios.
So here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up right now over the Cap's 2025 wide receiver salaries. So basically the cap number and the cash spent. And you can see where kind of the ballpark kind of is being set currently for the receiver market. Obviously, Justin Jefferson reset it, but he was only in year 3 of his rookie deal, and they extended him out, so he's still a lower cap hit on this currently. So here, I'll just share this up so all of our listeners in that can see this as I bring it up here on the screen. So, I know it's kind of small, but here we go. So the number one cap hit for a receiver next year is Davante Adams at 44. Number 3 is Tyler Lockett. Because of how they reworked his deal, he is in theory, cash spent 17, but his total cap hit is $30 million. DK is 29. And Cooper Kupp's kind of sandwiched in between. So I'm of the belief Tyler Lockett's not on the roster next year, and that cap money is going to be reallocated and put back into the team in a way of doing it. But you look kind of the numbers that are around him. Calvin Ridley, Scary Terry. This Christian Kirk to me is still laughable that the Jaguars paid him that much money after his couple of years in Arizona. Then Debo, Michael Pittman. So in that conversation, if this is 2025, would you take DK over kind of that lump sum of guys? Like obviously Tyreek's and Davante Adams, I would take Davante Adams over DK Metcalf. I think most people would. Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Terry, McLaurin, Debo, Michael Pittman Jr. Like, are you, Jamar Chase is in here. We know he's probably going to get a new deal, and obviously Justin Jefferson did. But out of that group, is there anyone that stands out to you that you'd be like, yeah, I'd rather have him over DK at kind of roughly the same price range?
Go on, Mitch.
If
I can see Mitch thinking about this hard.
There's a couple players on there I would swap, but when I look at the cap number on those players, I wouldn't. Like Davante Adams, I would love.
Right.
I really would love, but not at that number. And for the difference, I'd take DK Metcalf, which it's a similar thing to our discussion we're going to have about Geno. I think there's a few quarterbacks we'd swap Geno for as well, but when you factor in the deal he's on, you suddenly backpedal a little bit, and it's the same here. Would I swap Metcalf for Kupp? Probably not because of JSN. I think the area where Kupp's excelling, we've got a guy that can
right down there.
Yeah, we got a few years of a good deal there, I think. But no, there's no clear-cut obvious one. Underrated guy there, maybe Terry McLaurin. Year on year.
You've stolen my answer. Yeah.
Well, I went first, so suck it up.
God damn it, Mitch.
Yeah, no, I think he's chronically underrated, and if you've ever had him on fantasy, you'll know all about it. He churns out the points. Yeah, so maybe
you factor in the
McLaurin.
quarterbacks he's played with as well, and the production he's been able to put up. That would be the only one where I would, if it came between the two, I would genuinely sit there as a GM, holding my head in my hands, going, "Oh my Lord, I love DK, but you look at Scary Terry and what he's done with people like Sam Howell as his quarterback, and do you know what? I can't even remember past that. That's how inconsequential the Commanders are to me. But he just seems every year he just seems to do stuff. It's every time the ball gets in his hands, he's creating yak. He's got the fantastic separation. It's just such a tough one. And I'm with you on that. I think Terry McLaurin would be the one that I look at when it comes to cap hits, because he's nearly he's 4.5 million cheaper per season.
So I love Scary Terry. I have him on my fantasy. Turns out, the numbers. But I look at his skill set and what he does well, and then I look at his age here. And that's the thing for me, too, apart from cap, is age. He would be 29 going on 30 if we were to get him, say, next year, because we do have DK under contract. To me, we have Scary Terry on our roster already in JSN. In a lot of ways, we do. And at that, like Mitch said, that really low cap hit. So when you take in age, cap hit, the thing about DK is he's still a young receiver. Like, he's not, and I hate this site because of all its ads, but he's only 27.
Yeah, get an ad blocker, my dude. So.
Trust me, I've tried using it on this thing, and it freaking doesn't work well at all. I've tried it, Josh. It's horrible. But let's look at 2026, which would theoretically be like next year, 2026. So there you go. There's your Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract kicks in. Michael Pittman Jr.'s contract is now kicking in. So, now DK is obviously not on this. But this is where I look and I go, like that list we were talking about. Really, DK is in this area of he's not Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, or Tyreek Hill. But I would put him in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman, Cooper Kupp, under that $33 million range, like we talked about. And like Mitch said, load it with some incentives. Like, I really do see that being a way to get that contract because Tyler Lockett won't be there. It truly will be DK and JSN if you do extend him. And, that's kind of the way I see it being best set up for Seattle.
Yeah, looking at the numbers.
Can we just address as well that AJ Brown contract looks like an absolute steal?
Yep. 100%.
The Eagles. That is just, it's ridiculous. When you look at people like Tyreek Hill, he's
Tyreek Hill will be $56 million cap hit for the Dolphins in 2026.
It's like 31, 34, 56. And then you've got AJ Brown, who stays around about the 20 mark. That is that's mind blowing. Howie Roseman. I know we're not an Eagles pod, but I doff my cap to that man. That is an unreal piece of business.
Well, you think about it, he's got AJ Brown at the 29, like you're talking about, Josh, and then he's got Devontae Smith at 14. His two top receivers equal out to the contract of Tyreek Hill, essentially, mathematically. And the production of both of them is more than just Tyreek Hill on his own. That's where, for me, like, when we have this DK discussion and people are so quick to jump on, like, get rid of DK, like, go draft a receiver. How many number one receivers have we seen where they just don't add it? Look at Drake London down in Atlanta. Like, he was touted coming out of USC as this big-time receiver that was going to set the league on fire in some respects. And, yes, they've had Arthur Smith down there who didn't properly use him, or Kyle Pitts. But you draft that, and if that's the situation you get into and you let DK walk out the door where you're getting a guy that averages about 1,000 yards a year, between 5 and 10 touchdowns, that's a massive production hit to your offense. And that's also asking a lot of JSN, because if you let DK walk, Tyler's not young. Tyler's old. Like, now you're down.
I was going to make that same point. I was just about to say, you mentioned it earlier that maybe Tyler's not on the roster next year. It's been hard to tell who is wide receiver one from 1 week to the next, because those main targets are spread out so evenly. Well, do you really want to lose Metcalf and Lockett in the same year? That's a tough ask to cover. To replace Tyler Lockett alone is an enviable task, and so is Metcalf. But both of them in the same year, I wouldn't want to do it.
That's just resetting your whole wide receiver core, isn't it? That's
yep.
relying on
then
JSN, Derek Young, Jake Bobo.
And, like, that's the thing. Like, I love Jake Bobo, but Jake Bobo to me is not a number 3. He's a 4 at the height. He's a 4 and kind of a utility rollout guy in certain packages. Tyreek or Drake Young has never really materialized. He had a lot of promise, but again, he was a flyer pick that they took late on. You got Laviska Shenault. We took D. Eskridge, who's never really panned out. So, like, we don't exactly have, outside of Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, who we got late in his draft year in the 3rd or 4th round, I believe, DK in the 2nd round, and then JSN with pick 20. We don't have this extended list of Seahawk history of drafting receivers well, except for the last couple of, drafts that we've had. I think if you're looking at anything, it's Tyler Lockett comes off the books next year. He either retires or you kind of say, hey, look, you got to take a significant cap hit if you want to stay around, and you're not. Like, the thing this year, JSN needs to supplant Tyler as the number 2. Tyler needs to kind of move into that 3rd down role, kind of receiver, and let JSN truly be the number 2 with DK. But you're also potentially in the next, depending on how Geno does, which we'll obviously get into that topic, like Mitch said, in a little bit, you could be drafting a young quarterback. Do you want to draft a young quarterback? Potentially, it is an option still, and say Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are now out of that picture for that young quarterback. So really, he's only got one guy to work with in a division where there's San Francisco, there's LA, Even Arizona now is starting to come back alive down there with Gannon as their coach. That's also a lot to ask of a young kid going, okay, cool. So you're getting drafted. You're all excited. Say hypothetically somehow Seattle gets like a Quinn Ewers next year or Carson back in the draft. They take a flyer and they get one of these guys. Okay, cool. DK's gone in a year, so's Tyler. If I'm that rookie quarterback, I'm going, shit. Who am I throwing the ball to besides JSN? Jake Bobo and Laviska Shenault? Jake Bobo and Drake Young? Like, who do I throw the ball to besides JSN in this offense? Like, you're not giving me a lot to work with, and then you're trying to bank on making that up in a draft. Like, that's where this conversation really gets hard, is that Tyler part of this. Like, everyone I think forgets about, like, a lot of the Seahawks fan base forgets, like, it's easy to say trade DK and get draft capital or whatever. You really would need to trade DK and get a comparable receiver back that's still young enough he's going to be around for a few years, and you're not going to just all of a sudden be a revolving door at the other receiver position outside of JSN. And that's why when Mike Salk was driving this narrative forward, I was sitting there going, have you really considered the actual aspect of the next 3 years of Seattle, which I think a lot of people don't. They're so focused on the now and not the 3-year, 4-year outlook that most GMs look at their teams.
Difficult.
Yeah, I think it is. The rationale of keeping DK is there. It's, like I said, it's a multifaceted argument that you can argue for and against so much. I'm team, like, keep DK. I don't think we've had a wide receiver like him. I think we are on this pod. There is a majority of, it's unanimous, all three of us.
Yeah,
I think it's just, I think people need to take a step back from the hate and the vitriol that they see on X and Facebook and Instagram, and actually look at what he does bring and what he can bring and what the team's like without him. Once you've done that,
we're also quite lucky that we haven't had to see the team without him. His durability over these years has been remarkable. Usually when you see a bigger bodied guy that's got freakish athleticism and pace and things, they tend to break down quite a lot, pulled hammies and things like that. It's so common. It's another factor with DK Metcalf that makes him a bit of an alien, is the fact that he's got the size combined with the speed, combined with the explosiveness, combined with durability. You don't usually get all of it.
It's at this point where you plug the Instagram post and the X post that we put out, where you put this fantastic diagram together showing each wide receiver and what they excel in.
Yep.
And I'm just going to put it out there, at 12 Talk Pod. Give us a follow. They're all on there. Look at our last podcast, and Mitch put these fantastic diagrams together. And DK, durability, red zone threat, it's size, it's all there, and all the intangibles are there that you look for. And good luck trying to find someone just like him and being able to get him in the second round, like we did.
100%.
It's never going to happen.
And I looked at that chart, Josh, that Mitch put out, and who had the smallest kind of circular area in that chart? It's Tyler Lockett in a lot of ways. And that's where I look at Tyler now. And that chart might look different with Tyler 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when he's a younger player than what it is now.
The exact same thing.
But now you look at it, and he's like this small area of it. And it's like, I feel like JSN's chart is more indicative of what Tyler used to be, not what Tyler is now. And that's where you have to have that conversation of, would you rather see a JSN with a random Jake Bobo kind of chart hanging around with him as the number 2, or would you rather see the JSN and DK chart together and take out the Tyler? And that's where I'm in that category after this year, is take out the Tyler, pay the DK, because you're going to lose the money off Tyler's contract, and move forward that way. It's a conversation that I feel the DK conversation of moving on is a 4-year away conversation, when DK is pushing his early 30s, that maybe the soft tissue injuries start creeping up for DK, kind of like they did for Julio and Calvin Johnson. And that's where, okay, now we have to start looking at, hey, do we pay JSN or do we pay DK? Okay, we're going to take JSN for production purposes and whatnot at that point in a couple of years when that conversation comes up.
Agreed. Speaking
of, production, contract conversations, and like Mitch alluded to earlier, I'm going to propose this question. Josh is not looking forward to this. I can tell at all. He's going, I hate this. I don't want to talk about this. We're going to have a little conversation now on what starting quarterback in the NFL, you would take over Geno Smith. That is going to be our topic of conversation, Josh.
I'm just start throwing in grenades here. The Seahawks fandom is going to hate me. They're going to be like,
"Oh,
no,
it's
injuries everywhere."
Hey, so to give an idea for everybody, I pulled a chart from NFL PFF, their website here, and it's all tiered out. So we had all kind of talked a little bit in the lobby prior to the show, just let everyone know about the different tiers. So I'll bring this up on the screen here for everybody to see. So hold on one second here. I feel like Josh is going to be the one that's going to make everyone just really, I'm going to get lots of comments. Josh, I love it.
As long as we don't get them on our channel with people going,
"Oh,
what do you know?"
With me. So give me 1 second so I can get this a little bit bigger for everybody so everyone can see it more effectively.
I'm glad you said that.
There we
I've got
go.
my glasses on. I'll just squint.
It's okay. Can you see it, guys? Are you good? Is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the PFF's NFL QB rankings. So just so everyone knows, me and Mitch kind of talked about this a little earlier. We're taking into account contract, age, and body of work, per se. So, obviously we look at this list to start out. You got Patrick Mahomes. I think we'd all put our hand up and say, yeah, we'd take Patrick Mahomes over Geno. No, Josh, not even close. Doesn't interest him at all.
But on the caveat, he can't bring his wife or his brother. Deal?
No, I would love to see Josh have to watch Brittany Mahomes and Seahawks stuff.
The Jackson Mahomes.
No. She'd be wearing the neon green jersey all day long, and his brother would be doing little dances at Lumen Field.
I would gouge my eyes out with a rusty spoon if that happened. I'm being completely honest.
Couldn't you see, his brother raising the 12th man flag, getting everyone going?
No, there's a phrase used in army circles, and I'm not sure what you're like with bad language, but I would rather
go for it
on T in my hands and clap than see that. So there's a mental image for everyone. Not a chance. No, never in my lifetime.
Oh, fantastic. Now I just want to see it happen just for that sheer fact. All right. So we obviously all would have – this is not much of the conversation part of this. Lamar, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen are all guys, given even their contracts, you pay for that because of how they're able to impact the game. Postseason caliber. So Justin Herbert's one of them.
Just quickly, before we move on,
yes.
If you had a choice of one of those three, who would you pick over all the rest?
Burrow.
Allen.
And I know people talk about Burrow's injury history. It doesn't scare me as much as the big mass media wants to make it kind of out to be. He had a knee injury, no different than what Carson Palmer had his first couple of years with the Bengals there. In college, he was durable when he played. The wrist injury kind of happened out of nowhere. I was more concerned about his calf, that he was going to tear his Achilles. That's what more or less I thought was going to happen, which I'm glad didn't for him. But his body of work when he is, playing behind set was what a porous offensive line. As Seattle fans, we know how bad offensive line play is. And you think of that Super Bowl, he gutted that team through the playoffs with Jamar Chase, beat Kansas City. He is the only one still to do that, to beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City besides Tom Brady. Everyone else is lost. Lamar's lost. Josh Allen's lost. And they're better athletes. But Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is a better quarterback. You can put more on. And that's the thing I think needs to be.
In a pocket, yes. I
Yes.
like my quarterback to offer more than just being a pocket passer and a pocket presence. I said Josh Allen. I'm going to flip that. I'll say Lamar. Lamar's body of work, what he offers you in the rush game, his RPO game, he can sling it downfield. I'd love to see Lamar in a Seahawks jersey. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there. I saw that list of 3 names, and it's one of those, if you ever pick a decent position in your fantasy league, what quarterback do you take first? And it's usually one of those 3, because some mug always takes Mahomes in the first round rather than a good wide receiver.
No, and I totally appreciate that. I train and work with quarterbacks, and a couple of things that I find though that ends up happening with guys that are more athletic, and we kind of saw it happen with Russ. When the legs start to give out, their careers start to suffer from it. That's where a guy like a Joe Burrow, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, the list goes on and on. The more you excel within the pocket, the longer your career ends up being effective and lasts. And that's where I look at, how is Lamar going to look at once his speed's gone? How is Josh Allen going to look once the speed's kind of gone from him and his ability to take? And my big thing with Josh is, how is he going to handle taking big hits and that wearing on his body over time? But again, all three of these guys, I think we would take over Geno Smith, even given their contracts or whatever, because of the impact they have. So,
Bryce, I'm just going to say, damn you with your logic and experience. You're basically doing what Mitch does to me on every one of our pods, where I speak from the heart and then Mitch goes from the head. And I'm like, oh, no, logic defeated every time.
Oh, I'm sorry, Josh. You got two logic guys on here today. Ryan would have been great to have for you to be your emotional support system.
I need that emotional support. Right, let's go to the next tier.
So we got Justin Herbert. I don't know how he fits necessarily in postseason caliber QBs, as he's only been there once. But I think we would all potentially take Herbert over Geno. Now this is where
I would take Oregon Herbert over Geno. I'm not sure about Chargers Herbert.
This is where it gets interesting for me, is in this from 6 down. I would take Geno over Dak Prescott. Contract, not as much wear and tear on him as most guys his age and Geno. And body of work, really, what has Dak done in the playoffs that is so enlightening besides his rookie year where he got gifted the divisional round because of the bye? I don't really look at Dak Prescott as somebody I would take over Geno Smith. The contract he potentially is going to sign, like I've seen, and I'm sure you guys have as well, all these blockbuster trade ideas and all this garbage. I'm not as big of a believer. To me, Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins are the same quarterback. They excel beating up on poor teams, but when they're faced to have to play good teams, they struggle. You think about who our division has. Dak isn't very good versus the 49ers. He's not very good versus the Rams. You have to play those teams 4 times in a season. I don't think Dak Prescott's getting us 3-1 or splitting that. I think we're on the other end of that being 1-3, maybe 0-4 in those situations, and that's just not going to cut it to win a division.
Every season you hear this is our year from Cowboys fans. This is your year to watch mediocre QB play, to just capitulate as soon as it gets to the playoffs or down the tail road. I'm not a Dak believer. I cannot get on board with any of the hype. Mitch, I'll put it over to you before I go on a massive rant about how much I dislike Dak Prescott.
I think both of you have dramatically missed the point. If you have Dak Prescott as your quarterback, 17 games in a season, you have to watch the game muted, because no one wants to hear "Here we go" before every snap of the ball.
Oh, I totally forgot about that part. Oh gosh.
No one wants that. Nobody needs
Cowboys
that.
fans want that, and they can.
Cowboys fans want that when he lifts the makeshift Lombardi. Here we go.
So
here we go.
Every Cowboys fan on Madden is going, yeah, here we go, Lombardi. Here we go. Just no. So Dak is a no. Let's please just move on.
Okay. So none of us we take Geno over Dak. Okay. Matthew Stafford.
Interesting one. Can I just interject very quickly?
Go for it, Josh.
As a spinal cord injury sufferer, big up my SCI suffering family there. This man's spinal cord is held on by a shoestring, which is proven medically. He is literally one big hit to the top of the head from paralysis from the shoulders down. That right there is a cause for concern. In a position that is as prone to being hit as QBs are, it's not worth it. His body of work, he took Detroit as a mediocre team. He made them semi-respectable because of his play. LA, obviously, he's gone there, won a Super Bowl because he was a steady Eddie at QB. He is not, in my opinion, a quarterback that's going to elevate you in a team like ours to win a Super Bowl. Plus, you're always going to have that hanging over your head of how many games before he gets injured? How many games before there is some terrible, and I don't want this to ever happen to him because it's horrific, terrible nerve injury, which affects his throwing arm, which affects his running, which affects any part of mobility. It's a solid no from me. I respect the man and what he's done in his career, but he's playing a very, very dicey game, still playing a contact sport. No.
I'd have him, but I wouldn't. But I wouldn't have him much longer than we're projected to keep Geno. Like I think 2 years. If we had him for the next 2 years, I'd enjoy watching him. I'd happily pay him similar or slightly more than Geno for those 2 years. And I know we're going to get on to Rodgers, but it would be a very similar story with Rodgers too. I don't think we're going to win much in the next 2 years. We're rebuilding, right? If we were to swap Geno for anyone, I wouldn't mind it being a similar aged, but also very experienced quarterback. Geno is a proper veteran in terms of age, but he's not an NFL veteran in terms of snaps and games. So there is a little bit to be gained in actual quarterback experience with swapping Geno, in my opinion.
So it's funny because I agree with both of you in both sense of this, which put me in a dilemma. Thanks, Josh. Geez, you played the emotional.
That's what I'm here for.
Played the emotional card on me. So
throwing grenades.
I love Stafford. I loved him coming out of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Stafford took a horrible Detroit program and made them mediocre, respectable. He went to the Rams and solidified what they were lacking. Because you remember, he came in on Jared Goff, who was a steady Eddie for a lot of what McVay wanted. Stafford was able to give McVay more in what he's able to do. He is still, in my opinion, the best pure passer of a football in the NFL. Like the way it comes out of his hand is unreal, and the no-look pass and so on. I would say yes to Stafford if I was getting him 4 years ago. Saying yes to Stafford now with him wanting a contract. Remember, he wants more money now. He has got a hit or two away from a bad arm injury. He's got the bad back. And that to me is, okay, cool. So we're going to take that on. He takes a hit from Bosa, and now we're back to Sam Howell and our backup quarterback, and we've a lot of this money. So Stafford 4 years ago, pre some of these injuries, absolutely sign me up for it. Stafford now with the injuries, with the durability concerns, and the inevitable wanting more money than what we're even paying Geno, I got to go with Josh on this and say no to Stafford. That's how my logic and emotion played together there. So I took a little bit of both of you. And it's my argument's very much the same for Rodgers as who's number 8 on this list. Like, I think I'd take Geno over Rodgers. I get Rodgers is a Hall of Fame first ballot. He's going in. For me, a big part of Rodgers' thing now is how he acts off the field. And I'm not
Just
saying to each their own on what they want to do. But when you missed all of last year with your injury, mandatory minicamp shows up and you decide, I got to be somewhere else than there, yet you're harboring on other guys within your organization that how important this is. Like, he is turned into such a hypocrite that in turn affects the team. And if you've got Mike McDonald in there, like if we had Pete Carroll, maybe different conversation because Pete's an older coach and can understand how to handle, multiple personalities like he's dealt in the past with the Legion of Boom. I think Mike McDonald and kind of how he comes from that Harbaugh tree wouldn't put up with that. And I think it would cause a lot of division within the organization that way. Rodgers can still spin a football. He's still extremely talented. I just would say no for the other side of this of how it affects the team going forward. Mitch?
Yeah, I'm not big on Aaron Rodgers at this point. I know he he could probably turn our franchise into. He moves the ceiling from maybe 10 wins this year to maybe 12, and I don't want to pay Aaron Rodgers that money or tolerate the attitude and the ego for the sake of 2 wins in transitional years. I think a similar situation to Stafford, like you said, if I was getting Aaron Rodgers 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago, I'd be paying him $50 million a year at least, because I think if you had that 4-year run up, I think you could be expecting for at least a deep playoff run with that kind of quality. At this
the
point,
MVP cycle for him, those few years.
I'm not that keen. I'm not that keen.
I'm again just gonna throw it in there. Rodgers as the person, and I'm really sorry, Bryce, for over talking you. I think he's a douchebag.
Oh,
if he wants to go and sit in a darkened cave, each their own. I have a very simple philosophy on life. If it doesn't affect me or those closest to me, I do not care. However, I can still call you a douchebag for your actions. And he comes across as a douche, apart from dressing like Nicolas Cage from Con Air, which was quite cool. I'll give him that. But if you differentiate the person, douchebag, from player, multiple MVP, elevated the Packers to a point where after Favre left, and one of my best friends is a Packers fan, so he likes to remind me about this. From when Favre left, they thought they were going to be decimated, to him taking them to the point where they were one of the most relevant teams in the NFL. Even now at his age, if you were talking about a pocket passer in someone like Joe Burrow, that is what you're getting with Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to run for the extra yards. However, he's going to command an offense. He's going to throw that ball. He's going to make the right read. Do you know what? I hate myself for saying this, but I'd take Aaron Rodgers, providing I could get him some psychiatric help.
What a caveat that is.
I want to just pull a grenade and throw it back at you, Josh, a little bit on this. And are you sure you can keep him healthy in the pocket? Because where did he blow out his Achilles? In the pocket.
But again, that's the how good's our old. I think this is.
But he didn't get touched. He just turned and planted his foot in the ground.
Yeah. But what type of field was he on?
Oh, jeez. Here we go. Conversation. Oh, God. Mitch, I feel bad for you. You got to deal with that kind of conversation.
But yeah, but again, I'd still take him. This isn't to besmirch Geno. I think what Geno's done is admirable, but Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Even if you get him at the twilight of his career, for 2 seasons at least, I think he would command an offense and know how to run it efficiently to the point where, like Mitch said, we get those extra 2 wins. We wouldn't be a wild card. We'd be in the playoff, possibly the home playoff, and then we might see a deeper playoff run.
So the one little caveat I'll throw into that.
You're so against Rodgers as a Seahawk, aren't you?
But I know I love Rodgers. Like, I have a Rodgers signed jersey in my closet. Like, I loved Rodgers going through Cal and everything. My biggest concern with Rodgers is I agree. As a thrower of the football and a pocket passing quarterback, he is still top 10 in the NFL in that regard. But when I look at this list and I think about biggest part of the quarterback outside of his ability to throw a football is how does he command and lead a team? Mm-hmm. I feel like Rodgers is such a detriment now to that in a way that when you have a volatile receiver like a DK Metcalf and you have some of these other players that are going to look up to a Rodgers, do you really want him butting heads with Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb? You got to think Ryan Grubb would have to be kicked out for Nathaniel Hackett because he loves Hackett so much. Hackett has to be there. Like, these are all the other components that I look at when I'm evaluating if I'm bringing a quarterback in over Geno. Geno leads. He doesn't necessarily cause that many ruffles when it comes to I'm not going to listen to so-and-so, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not showing up to mandatory minicamp. Like, those are the things where when I look at bringing in my quarterback to lead my franchise, as you alluded to, Josh, I don't think Aaron Rodgers gives you that. Like, Aaron Rodgers, again, back in Green Bay when he was having his MVP seasons? Yes. Aaron Rodgers now with what he's at the New York Jets and how he's acting? No, because he's going to come in, he's going to do more damage to my organization in the long run than he will give it success.
Bryce, you and I need to do a pod where it's coach to coach, where it's me speaking as a sports coach, you speaking as a sports coach, because we've got very similar, but I think that our arguments for it are slightly counterbalanced, because I completely agree with what you say. But then from a coaching perspective, I go, but if I work with this player, regardless of how old and how experienced they are, then you should be able to bring them on your side to make them see the benefit of what they're doing for the team. Hey, let's stop talking about Aaron Rodgers, because he just dominates every conversation in preseason.
Very true. Okay, so that's our Aaron Rodgers topic for everybody, which I'm sure the Seahawks fans will just love.
I'm going to
Jalen Hurts. Let's try and get through these. Jalen Hurts. Are we taking him over Geno?
Shrug. On the 1 yard line, yes. Providing we get Jason Kelsey's center as well, yes. Everything else, meh.
Yeah, not for me. Not for me. I think the money that he's going to be expecting is not going to tally up with what I think you'd get.
No, I agree. Number 10 on this list, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm taking CJ Stroud. I wanted Seattle to trade up for Stroud if they could have in the year that they took Witherspoon. Like, he was my QB to take. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I think we're all kind of unanimous in the contract, the age, even though his rookie year, like with what he did with that Texans team, you give him DK Metcalf and, oh gosh, if you had him in Ryan Grubb's offense now that we're about to see, that could be it could be special. Okay, so a guy that I'm truly excited about,
Mitch,
and I would take.
Were you a yes on Stroud as well?
I was yes on Stroud. I was going to say, if you asked every franchise in the league about Stroud, there's probably only 3 franchises that would say no.
Carolina Panthers going, no, we drafted the number 1. He's obviously miles better.
I think they'd say yes. I genuinely think they'd say yes. They'd say yes, but I think Mahomes is safe. Joe Burrow is maybe safe.
And the 49ers with Brock Purdy, obviously, is a superstar. Come on.
The idea of the 49ers having Stroud is a scary thought.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I agree with you, Mitch. I think there's 3 teams, the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Bills, that I think would all say no to that because they've got their guys. I think the Ravens are actually a team that may consider it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now I've got Josh's wheels turning again.
Well, if we're going to finish this tonight.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay,
let's get through this.
Jordan Love. I would take Jordan Love over Geno Smith.
Me too.
No.
He hasn't got the body of work consistently for me to take him as a starting QB in a brand new offense.
I'm kind of interested in this because I look at his body of work down the second half of that season, what he did in the playoffs versus versus Dallas, who was supposedly to have the number 1 defense, and then what he even did versus San Francisco, even though they somehow bungled that game away defensively. Based on his age, his contract, I don't see how, I get your body of work portion of that, but yet we just said yes to CJ Stroud, who's only had 1 year as a rookie. They've essentially had the same amount of time.
One consistent year as a rookie. Game after game, he made the right throws, the right reads. He put a team on his back properly that were inconsequential in the NFL. The Packers have always been relevant. They've always had players. You even look at they've got Dobbs, they've got Watson, although Watson was injured a lot last season. They've got a team. They've got a fantastic offensive line. You put Jordan Love behind it, and bear in mind he has been learning from someone like Rodgers. Cool, that's awesome. But I cannot see professionally his body of work consistently yet. If we talk next season and he's done the latter part of last season, comes into this season, I will bang the table and go yes. But right now, no, because I have belief that Geno can run this offense.
Part of Jordan Love's body of work in the NFL to date is showing extraordinary patience and maturity and showing that he's extremely coachable, and then immediately hit the ground running when needed, and just took to it like a duck to water. There's a small body of work actually out there doing it, but there's a large body of work being a proper professional, and that underscores the little window we've seen of him playing, and that makes me extremely excited. And
this might be the end of the podcast after this.
I love Mitch.
Anyway, you two can be your own, but it's just me. I'll be the minority. Come on, next. Trevor Lawrence, yes.
Did you just say yes to Trevor Lawrence?
Devil's advocate.
Please tell me that was. Oh, Josh.
I'm a Lawrence believer. I'm sorry. I genuinely think what he's done for the Jags, I think he has dragged that team kicking and screaming from obscurity, unless you're a UK fan and see them twice a year in London, to actually beating some decent teams. He's just unfortunate the fact that the surrounding cast are not great.
Okay, so one thing I'm going to ask you about that, Josh, and that decision. Statistically, he is the exact same, if not below Geno.
I know.
And he's had injuries, and now you're paying him that massive new contract compared to Geno's. Is it really worth that maneuver?
That's the only thing.
Now we're going to tie this in. I'm going to tie this in with you, Josh. You pay Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be very hard to keep DK.
Yeah. For me, Lawrence is Geno Smith with a higher ceiling and better hair, but a much larger cap hit. And you're paying you're paying for potential rather than paying less for what you're getting right now. And because we're in that sort of transitional phase, I don't really want to be speculating on someone's potential on that kind of contract. I'd rather speculate on potential with the draft pick than the money, personally.
All right, fine. It's a no. Fine. I wouldn't take him over Geno. You two are bullying me on this pod.
We're just right.
We need an ombudsman. I need to file an official complaint. Right, fine. Yeah, okay. This is bullying in the workplace.
It's okay. Josh is going to send a strongly worded Twitter message to Ryan being like, you can't not be on the show when Bryce and Mitch are
next
together.
Time, Ryan, you need to be on here with us because I'm getting picked on. It's not fair. I'm the minority because I'm a ginger Englishman.
Oh, man.
Whatever. It's fine. You two, I'll just stay quiet. I'm just going to say yes or no going forward. Don't forget Brock Purdy. No.
I would not take Brock Purdy over Geno.
No.
That's a pretty strong no for me. I don't see it.
That's it. No.
Okay, Tua. I'm a no.
Do I drop
Sorry, before we do Tua, I'd take Purdy if it was day one of his round 7 contract.
Okay, yes, but we're not getting that.
It's not. It's not. In the situation the 49ers have had him in, I'm envious of that situation. I'm not envious of them now trying to work out what they need to pay him. That's a tough spot.
I do have one tidbit with that, Mitch, that do you think he could come in and be as effective as a quarterback in the offensive systems that we have ran compared to what he's been running in Kyle Shanahan's? Because I don't see Purdy being able to vertically throw the ball to DK and the receiver, because we don't have a George Kittle. We don't have the effective run game that the 49ers like. We have a run game, but it hasn't been as effective in the last couple of years. That's for me where I struggle with Purdy, because I don't see him being able to push that ball down the field to DK like we like to take our shot throws and stuff and be able to execute that effectively. Whereas in Kyle Shanahan's off of the play action and guys running across zones so wide open, I think it's easy for him to throw the 15-yard over route to George Kittle because he's open by 6 yards because everyone's sucked up into what Kyle Shanahan does with the run. So if you give me Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan scheming, then yes. If it's just Brock Purdy alone, I struggle saying yes to that over Geno because I think Geno has more talent than Brock Purdy does.
I would agree with that. And I'd also say that anyone who gets to come into the league as Mr. Irrelevant and keep putting the ball in the hands of CMC and Debo and letting them do the work for you has the best security blanket I've ever seen in my life.
100%.
Honestly. Yeah.
See, there you go, Josh. I'm not always agreeing with Mitch.
Hell, I'm even agreeing with you and disagreeing with my own point. So, yeah.
I win. Next one. The meme that has become Hawk Tour. Spit on that thing. No.
I wouldn't take Tua either. I think he, again, kind of in the same light that we just talked about Purdy. It's great when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and Mike McDaniel is a great play caller in his own right and the ability to scheme things, but I just don't see it from Tua consistently. And I think if you take those weapons away, you get a below to average NFL quarterback.
Agreed. Well, the fact as well, like you look at the QB room he came from. Jalen Hurts, we've already said no to him. Tua, and then you've got Mac Jones. All three of them touted to be these fantastic NFL quarterbacks. Mac Jones, now the backup in Jacksonville. Tua, the starter in Miami, because they believe in him, but all it's going to take is one more big shot to the head and he's seeing stars and ducks and he's out of the league. And Jalen Hurts, just zero belief.
Yep.
But
no. So Kirk Cousins, no.
Absolutely not.
Not a chance. I don't see it. He, to me, he puts up same thing like we said about Dak, great numbers versus bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't see the plus in what he offers more than Geno. And the contract he's got, not a chance I'd want to take that. Jared Goff, I think this is a lateral move with a higher contract now. Like, I don't see it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I still would go and roll with Geno.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feeling different.
No, exactly the same. I wouldn't take Goff. He flamed out with the Rams, and he landed on his feet in a Detroit offense that utilized his limited skill set, and did all right with it, especially with the running backs he had. And he's got paid. Fair play to him. You know, you get paid for mediocrity. I think if we all could get paid for that sort of mediocrity, we'd be rolling in it. And yeah, it's a no for me.
Same.
Mighty Mouse.
Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray. No.
There are so many people that are Kyler believers, and I'm still waiting for that season to make me a believer. I see flashes, but he's not consistent enough. And I see his upside massively with the threat of his legs. He can hoist the ball. I mean, you look at what he did for that touchdown, just pure Hail Mary to Hopkins, but no consistent body of work. It's a big X from me. We should have had this set up so we're all at the bottom with like X's, like American Idol.
Oh gosh, Josh. Yes, Kyler Murray is a no for me. I think he's going to be better. I think this new system and new coaching staff there is going to do a lot more to make him into a quarterback. But I don't see the consistency in his play game in, game out, week in, week out, to elevate him and to make me feel like, again, part of my criteria with this is how is he going to lead that franchise and be someone that, and I just don't see it from Kyler. When you have to put in a guy's contract, you can't play video games. You need to study the plays. That screams to me like we've got some sort of problem here.
Something very Johnny Manziel about, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Yes.
However, I imagine like Kyler's like, what is it, Call of Duty, Warzone, whatever. I don't play it. Whatever his team is, it must be stacked with NFL players. You can imagine coming up against that and being like, is that Kyler Murray? Is that AJ Brown? Is that DeAndre Hop? What? You whoop them on the Xbox or the PlayStation, but still, they just go off to the mansions afterwards anyway. Carry on.
So here we go. Geno Smith is number 18 on this list.
We're keeping Geno over Geno, surely.
Yeah. Caleb Williams. Do we want to, like, this is where I kind of look at it and go, like, I'm not really going to include the rookies. We haven't seen them play yet. Again, like Mitch talked about, potential. So I'm not taking Baker over Geno.
Oh, he's my boy.
I love Baker too, but I'm just not. I don't see there being an elevation in play. And again, he's very streaky.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I compare them across, like, you know, Derek Carr, no. I'm not taking Derek Carr. And I know these guys are below the list.
Go on, Mitch. You've got to say yay or nay when we come past these because we're shooting through them now. Because these are the.
I'm just primed and ready to disagree with you. If you say something I don't agree with, and I'm just agreeing. I would say
Geno
from coiled spring of disagreement.
Geno Smith with Dave Canales was great, and Baker Mayfield with Dave Canales was really good as well. That I think it was a big factor for both players. Honestly,
yep, I agree with you as well. So Derek Carr, no, I'm not taking Derek Carr over Geno.
And just skip the next one. We don't even need to say his name. You're dead to us now.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson, not a chance. And again, now we're into.
It wouldn't have been PC enough. I can't say it. Right.
I was considering.
Anthony Richardson.
Podcast for more of this. Bryce will be on soon as well, and we'll reel him into these type of conversations.
Oh yes, absolutely. Anthony Richardson. Now, if he hadn't gotten when he came, how I said I would have taken CJ Stroud. I really thought Seattle was going to take Anthony Richardson, and a lot of things I've heard is he was
top of our
who they were actually considering at 5 if he hadn't have gone to the Colts the pick before. His arm is now a big concern for me. He was seen in camp throwing with his left arm because it started to hurt again. And, again, this is a potential. So, no, I'm taking Geno right now. I just, it doesn't make sense for us to take a guy that's already got kind of, I don't want to say it, but damaged goods in a way. When you bugger up your throwing shoulder, it's hard to come back from. Drew Brees is the only one that's ever done it.
Can you say that again, please?
Buggered up.
Yeah. That was the most Britishism I've ever heard.
Well, I've got to, kind of fellow podcasters here. I'm going to use the term buggered.
Yeah, do you bugger it up? You do.
You buggered it right up. So I would say no to Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young, I would say no to because I think Bryce Young is not what he was touted to be. And the rest of these guys, again, unproven in Drake May and Jaden Daniels. Jacoby Brissett is just a backup journeyman.
Jaden Daniels is a bargain basement Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
Next.
Will Levis. Now, Will Levis would have been interesting if Seattle had taken him. Again, I'm not taking him over Geno. And then there's not a
two
chance
on that list that I think if we drafted and sat behind Geno for a season, it could be a completely different story. Levis and Richardson, which Mitch and I alluded to on our pod before the draft. Richardson especially. Levis, I think we touched on saying he's got a few foibles and quite a few intangibles that make him a good pocket presence, but he needs to be sat behind a veteran to learn how to read a game and to make the right throws. So,
agreed.
I agree with you completely here.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
No. God, Minshew mania. Come on.
Not a chance. So,
see,
guys, just to go over this, realistically, the only guys, and this is kind of the agreements that we had, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, CJ Stroud, Herbert, based on contract and age, and then me and Mitch said yes to Love, and Josh said no. But really, guys, that is a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks that we would take over Geno Smith currently in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So when I look at that, to me, I think we're in a really good spot as an organization with Geno compared to what, the national media, Seattle, is a quarterback away. They need a quarterback. I think Geno with this new offense is very capable of making us a playoff contending team that a couple breaks go our way, we could be playing in an NFC championship game.
Just very, very quickly, on that list, it missed one quarterback. The MILF hunter himself, Zach Wilson.
Oh, God.
Yeah. There was only 2 QBs on that Broncos list.
Oh,
I think Mitch's face said it all. But is that a yes or a no? All right, it's a no. I'm sorry. I just had to throw that in there, just because I like making fun of the man.
How could it be anything but a no? You're literally just stirring it up at this point. What's the matter with you?
Oh, God.